Well, welcome to Mudflood Was Armageddon. Mudflood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. Uh, no warning for this video. I just popped on live. I want to, watch Joel. He's that young man, postmillennial preterist, and has been talking about the giants. Have they added 1,000 years? And they're trying to get the grips on that. No hint yet of any flat earth movements, but this will be a good explanation for anybody that wants to catch up, because they should be able to explain the difference, because they do not believe they've added 1,000 years, that Christ has ruled and reigned. And they do believe a lot of prophecies were fulfilled, but we'll let them. We'll just catch up. We're about 15 minutes behind. They usually go 40 minutes. I don't know if we'll cover it all, but let's see if we can. So these are a couple of smart guys, and full disclosure, I'll have to go back and look at the tapes with Brother Randy and see how long ago did we hear about the Nephilim, and realize, boy, we better take a look at this Psalm 82. This is a big deal. So it looks like they've been going about 20 minutes. Let's just get the introductions. And who is this guy? Joel, who is this guy? Doug Van Dorn. Doug? Paul? Hey, who is that guy?
Scripture.
Really, the main focus of his book is to talk about the divine council. Like I said, the Nephilim, the angel of the Lord, these are subtopics underneath it. So the divine council is essentially the idea that there's a group of celestial heavenly beings that rule over the affairs of the cosmos. And if you want an analogy from Greek mythology, think about the Olympians. Now, the problem is, of course, as soon as I say mythology,
And that's where we did. We had to tie it back into the Titans. The Mudflood Armageddon already believed in two creations. We didn't know how it went down, but it helped our explanation. Most post-mill, most preterists are like this. Look, big Hulk hands, at least four guitars. One of them looks like an obscure bass mandolin, a 12 string or something. Talented people, swords, but the glow, man. These are smart people that have a long way to go to get the lifting of the veil that the average truther that is on the narrow road is already talking about. Man.
people, especially in our world, they start to go crazy because they hear the word myth and they think fake, fiction, lies, all this
Right.
kind of stuff. And my understanding of mythology has changed dramatically. I think C.S. Lewis has been very helpful to me to understand this. In some ways, Tolkien as well. Both these guys were just incredibly steeped, well versed in.
I think, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Frank Hebert, who wrote Dune, the Dune trilogy, and his son Brian, who wrote the others. I think they all had inside information. Something wouldn't surprise me if they posed with their hand inside their vest.
Myth is that it's really just an origin story. It can be either true or false. It can have over the course of time, you can have changes in it. So you can have contradictions in Greek mythology because they've changed the stories or they've heard them differently or whatever the case may be. I mean, these things are so old; they go back before any kind of written history, and they're a vehicle that can stand the test of time, that can help people understand where their origins are from. So that's why Heiser's original title for his book, The Unseen Realm, was actually The Myth That Is True. He's trying to convey the idea that the biblical story is a myth, in that it's an origin story, and it's got mythological ways that it's working on our psyche when we read it, but it's true. It's actually history. I think that probably, I actually believe fairly strongly that Zeus was a real character, and his name is actually in the Bible as either Satan or Baal, depending on the testament that you're in. I think that these are all the same entity.
And this is all speculation, and this is what Michael Heiser did. It's like releasing flat Earth. Somebody, and Rob Skiba was big in the beginning of that, and then he died, and now Michael Heiser was, he laid out everything about the Bible and the Elohim, and nobody did more to promote apocryphal books than Dr. Michael Heiser. With that, I mean, he's the guy that brought Enoch to the attention of the Atlanteans, and they'll forever love him for him. God will know his heart.
When somebody hears that, they freak out because they've been taught that, mythology is false. There's nothing true about it. How could you possibly say that Zeus is real? But as soon as I say, well, he's actually Satan, he's actually Baal. Now, Baal might bother some people because they might not think he's real either. He's just an idol. Well, that's not true. Right. But it's funny because none of our people in the Reformed world would say that Satan is anything other than a real supernatural fallen entity. They understand that. So to make that connection, and I think that you can make a pretty strong biblical case for it, that these are all the same entity. It really discombobulates a lot of people. So
yeah, the mythology, things get twisted and turned. But when you find certain myths, especially when you find universal myths, like every
the flood,
like the flood, yeah, then you're probably, maybe some of the details, like take it with a grain of salt, put your discernment hat on, don't be naive. But if you start finding the same story in every place and every time period and then there's probably something true there. And so the idea of
their chat gets a little contentious. Leon says in capital letters, Michael Heiser was clueless about Genesis chapter 2, verse 5. And that is one of my go-to verses because, God had not caused it to rain and there was no man to till the ground. No man the size to till the ground, who was later formed from the dust, not created in the image. It's all out there. It's fascinating.
It only has one eye because the other one was poked out. It's entirely possible.
That's Odin. So, are they talking about the Odin?
So,
part? They're they're man-eating giants.
Yeah.
And then what is Cyclops? I mean, think about that. It's like, okay, Cyclops. It's just a complete made-up story. Or like maybe a giant that was injured and left on an island, it only has one eye because the other one was
maybe it was Odin.
I mean, it's entirely possible. So anyways.
Yeah. So the giants, in the Divine Council worldview, a giant is essentially, it's a Nephilim. So that's a Genesis 6, and it's a son of what are called sons of God.
And see, Dr. Heiser contributed to the term Nephilim being applied to giants instead of mighty men of renown. Nephilim is used 3 times, and it says there were Nephilim in those days. It also says in that verse there were men of renown, mighty men. But which ones are connected? I'm not sure, because Nephilim is not used enough. And mighty men, most of the mighty men in the Bible were the good guys. Mighty men of David, Joshua's men who took over the promised land were mighty men. So the term is wrong. There's something going on. Something was weird going on in 0.5% of the Bible that never gets talked about too much in the New Testament, except acknowledging the fact that there were other Elohim. But they don't make a big deal about like, oh, no, you better not marry an Elohim. There were 8 people that got off the ark. People, humans. You got human blood, you can be saved. Thank you, Jesus.
And we'll just, for sake of argument, we won't go through this tonight, arguing for why we would believe textually that this is the case, but I can give you one. I can give you a lot. But they're the sons of God, and the sons of God have different titles in Scripture. One of them is a watcher. You only find this word explicitly or certainly in Daniel.
Chapter 4, interpreting a dream of Nebuchadnezzar, who was warned by an angel. Again, watcher. I think that's used 3 times, all in chapter 4 of Daniel. And the rest of the watchers, anything else you learn about the watchers is wrong because it's not from Scripture. It does not comport with the rest of Scripture.
4, but when Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, the watchers come down out of heaven and say that it has been decreed upon you, Nebuchadnezzar, that you're going to live like a wild animal or whatever. That decree of the watchers is a decree from the divine council. So these watchers, people might be more comfortable just calling them fallen angels. Over time, the term angel actually became, it changed, it morphed, like just like any word really does. In the early part of the Old Testament, an angel is really just a messenger, so it's a function. By the time you get to the New Testament, an angel really almost becomes an ontological category. It's it's a type of being. So when people get upset, with certain words that you could use for these guys, I'll just say, well, it's a fallen angel, and then that kind of takes it off the table. Probably the biggest word for these guys in the Hebrew is the word Elohim. They're called the Elohim. This is a word that's used for God, and it's used for the gods. And again,
what I don't understand is his terminology of that, because of the watchers and he's connecting them to the Nephilim, that all of a sudden the watchers are somehow fallen angels. Why would they be? This is a chapter 4 of Daniel is a long introduction to God saying, I've chosen you, Nebuchadnezzar. I'm raising up all of Babylon for one reason: destroy Jerusalem. He calls him a chosen vessel, anointed to destroy Jerusalem. And what does he learn along the way after this 7 years? He makes a decree, puts it in writing, and says, the God of Israel, who Daniel serves, is above all other gods. Make that decree. And then they started Zoroastrianism, and they were the ones, Gentiles, who came and paid attention and bought the synagogues it says it in the New Testament. The Gentiles were buying synagogues and supporting them. It was the time of the Gentiles. This is the time. That was the time of the Gentiles. Why does the gospel preach? The gospel says was first preached to Abraham to be a light to the Gentiles. Why did Jesus come in? When he saw, who was it, Simeon, the old man that saw him in the temple, he said, oh, you're going to be a light to the Gentiles. Don't make it, the Nephilim were evil because, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem. What, for no reason? God called him for one reason: destroy Jerusalem, because they were breaking the covenant big time, open. And that's an embarrassment to God's name, which he will not stand for. Smart Pod, you got it going on, man. Hey, here we go.
People will say, well, the gods aren't real. But if you understand that the gods are actually fallen angels, they're created entities. They're not on any kind of an ontological par with the uncreated creator of the universe.
Well, on that, I agree. But were they? I kind of, sometimes I'll roll my voice for you people like that. Were they really? I'm stalling. That's what I'm doing when you, or sometimes I just do it for fun. All right. I hear the pop in the background. That could be the co-host. Oh, it's not the co-host, Randy. It's the Dante Barry.
Hey,
Looks
how
like
you doing?
coming home from work.
Yeah. So I had a question about your topic, real quick. So you say you've got two different formations or creations. One was formed from the dust of the Titans. The other one was formed from God's image.
Yes, yes.
God's image was Father God, right?
Well,
Or was that a council as well?
What is he made them in the image of the Bene Elohim, the sons of God. They were already there, and he said, because I was going to get to Deuteronomy 32 and the dividing of the nations, Psalm 82, when he judges them, he says, how long will you act wickedly? What it seems like is that there were going to be nations in the world. All the Elohim were going to, Baal was going to be in charge of one, Chemosh was going to be in charge of another, and Yahweh was going to take, Brother Dante, you know who I'm talking about. He took you guys. He
Israel,
took you guys. He took you guys. He took Israel.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so now my confusion is, okay, who were the people that were formed from the dust of the Titans then?
Well, yeah, that's us.
That's us. Okay, so then who were the people that were formed, that were created in the image of the sons of God? Were they the sons of God, or were they created in the image of the sons of God?
Well, I know where they are. They're the rocks that are reserved in judgment, because they were all reserved in judgment in the flood from the glittering sword. The Bible never says anybody drowned in the flood. It says they perished in the flood. I think that's a choice of word that's used consistently, because they were reserved in judgment, which is how, what's the estimate of the Israelites that came out of Egypt? I've heard 2 million, and they make a pretty good argument for it could be even more.
Okay.
And water came out of a mountain of flint, because people like us, Dante, they say you're 70-80% water, but 100% of your cells are mostly water, because we're water divided by water. Water has a memory. It's the supercomputer whereby we'll be judged. It's all going on right now. It's unfolding before our eyes.
Okay. All right. Now I understand, because I've heard you talk about the two creations a few times.
How much of your drive do you have left? You want to stay on for a little while I go through Psalm 82?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I first wanted to show that this watcher, did I already show that? Because the watcher's not used. It's very rare. It's I did, but it's worth seeing again. It's only, hey, it's a watcher 2 times. These watchers, a holy one. So why would they be evil? And then I was going to take it to the Psalms. This is the one that in the 80s, Kenneth Copeland started teaching his people, you are little gods. You can name it and claim it,
Yeah, it's making a comeback.
It's making a comeback. But now it's got the whole, they were gods. Now, we'll just take it in the English, because there's a short psalm. God presides, 4:10 in the Hebrew, divides over an assembly. He renders judgments among the gods. 4:30, Elohim, how long will you judge unjustly? So he's taking them to task. He's called them up. We can read about it wherever they go in in Job chapter 1 and chapter 2, when they have another one of these councils. And where you been, Job? I've been walking on the earth. He's taking them to task. Deuteronomy wanted to set up the nations, and now they did it wrong. That makes sense, right?
Right.
How
Okay, so
how
now,
long
but
will you
this is
show
after the.
partiality?
Okay, but this is after the flood, so do we
How do
know
we
what's
know? How do we know?
I'm not sure. Well, you said Deuteronomy, right?
Well, this is Psalm 82.
Okay.
It's when
But we
it
don't
talks
know.
about the division of the nations, and it's very specific for Joshua. Go in your allotted land. Don't go into Lot's land. He has appointed land also. Don't go into Esau's land. He's got land. You can't go there. What they were doing is they were showing partiality to the wicked. That's what everybody did except the God of the Hebrews, the Israelites. They were supposed to defend the cause of the weak and the fatherless and uphold the rights of the afflicted, rescue the weak and the needy, but they did not. They did not know or understand. They wander in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I have said you are Elohim, 420, 430 in the Hebrew. All sons of Elyon, 530, 28. But this is the Most High God.
El
This is
Elyon.
El Elyon. He is the Spirit. You can't make a representation of him and say that's the Most High sitting on a throne. He is a spirit that is not water, that is everywhere. From what they say, he's everywhere at all times, be able to do anything.
Okay.
So anyway, something changed. And so now they are going to die like men. So among with their creation, they're probably some of those, like sleeping giant mountain. That's probably a sleeping frozen Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
Here, let's listen to a little bit more, Dante.
Okay.
He made them.
Right.
If you can get that into your head,
Right.
then you
That's what people
realize
have to understand. We're not talking about equals.
Not
there is
at all.
one God who is eternal, infinite, and who created Ex Nihilo.
Yeah.
He made these other gods.
See,
He made them all. And
your
in fact,
God, our
Colossians
God,
says that Jesus is the one who made them all, and it
is the
very, very
incarnation of that
specifically that he
water
made everything
spirit
in
God.
heaven and on earth. Why would it care to tell you what he made in heaven? Well, maybe so that you don't get confused about these guys somehow being equals with him, because they're not ontologically equal with him at all.
Right.
So, so that's what the divine council is. This is found all over the place. Some of the best known passages at the end of, I think it's 1 Kings 22. It's a really good one. This is where you have the prophet Micaiah overhears or sees in a vision this heavenly scene where God is having this argument with these other heavenly beings over what they should do with King Ahab, I think it is. And he says, who's going to go and be a lying spirit? And they have a fight over it. And finally one spirit says, I'll do it. So God says, okay, go ahead. You will succeed in doing it. What they're doing is they're having a council.
Randy and I were looking
heaven.
for this in
They're arguing
Jeremiah
about things over the
last
earth.
night.
And then once the decision is made, then they go out and do it. And God has the final say on it. You see this in, what's another good one? Daniel chapter 7. This is where the really famous verse that New Testament uses quite a bit, that one like a son of man comes riding on the clouds of heaven to the Ancient of Days, and he's presented a kingdom and all dominion and authority is given to him. Well, right before that, you have it gives you a description of the heavenly court. It talks about the throne, it talks about the Ancient of Days, it talks about a river being there, and it talks about the thrones that are around it, and the books are open. Well, what's that? Who are on these thrones? It's the heavenly beings. It's the divine council. There's just a ton of them that we could think of. Actually,
would you hold all the way? Like another example for you, would you be one of the guys who would say that like Genesis 1 and 2 in the creation narrative, like let us make man in our image, that's Trinitarian language, or that's divine council language? Are you a Christian struggling to find?
What do you think, Dante? I think that's definitely divine counsel language. I have gone away from the Trinity.
Yeah, I think it's divine counsel. Because when God speaks, or the Bible speaks of God, it just usually says God or the Most High or whatever. He doesn't usually say us. So
Yeah.
it seems to me that would be the divine counsel.
And the more you think about it, the Apostle Paul is constantly referencing this mystery that's being revealed. There's a mystery being revealed. Dispensationalists and the mainstream Christianity want to take that. The mystery is you can choose Barabbas and get off the hook 2,000 years later when they make up a country called Israel. Or the real mystery is that Gentiles were going to be the last, but then we were going to be the first, and the last were going to be together equal before God.
Yeah.
So for all of those generations, it doesn't matter. We're getting paid the same amount, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we're in and they were in, and it just happened. It just happened. You don't count the 1,000-year reign of Christ. In my world, we're 317 years into. It just happened. There was a 1,000-year reign of Christ. There was the reaping, put in your sickle, and then put in the other sickle for the grapes of wrath. And then here we are. And here we are 300 years ago going, Dante, I don't know how, it's been a while, but I'd love to have you on. Have you seen my emphasis lately? The United States, since 1958, with the NASA, DARPA, and everything else, you know what everything about our history is a cover-up that the United States was apartheid as bad as South Africa. It wasn't strictly just like, we had some eugenics laws. It was so entangled that the Nazis learned it from us. South Africa learned it from us. And yet we had to fake the bomb, be the heroes, get the petrodollar, and still put sanctions on South Africa in 1964 when we finally let black people vote?
Well, yeah, I have heard that. I don't know if it was from you, but I've heard it from multiple places that the Nazis actually got their education from the United States as far as their program that they ran, or their alleged program that they ran. We know it happened here for sure. But yeah, I've heard that.
Do you have your phone with you? Can you drive not distracted if I show you a website?
Oh yeah, you can show me. Yeah.
All right.
I can see it. I can look and see it. Yeah.
Here's the deal. I wanted to just find out how bad that, because I've seen, Lethal Weapon 3, and I knew that, it's bad. It was bad. Apartheid's bad. So I wanted to look up the one drop rule because that's what they had, right?
Uh-huh.
So I typed in one drop rule. I think I spelled it like drool, but I got it this time. I've been down that road. So when I finally got to the Wikipedia and clicked on it, I was shocked to find out that the one drop rule was a legal principle of racial classification that was prominent in the 1900s in the United States. It asserted that any person with even one ancestor of black ancestry, i.e. black blood, was considered black, and you can't drink at that fountain. If you want to be in a movie with a white person, you're the butler, you're the maid, you're a hooker, you're a singer, you're a shuffling. Yeah, I'll be your Charlie Chan. I'm your helper.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, man? I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I've known about that one drop rule. I've heard about that for a long time. Yeah.
Right there in the United States, and then the thing is we've got to get off the United States. All the countries had it. Everybody at that time in the whole short season is really just the 335 years. Everybody was going like, what? Darwinism sounds cool. We're the best. I mean, look at Lena Horne. Who wouldn't go like, yeah, they look pretty good to me too, you know? They could be the best. Sorry, you Judah, you're number 2 now, wherever she's from, number 1.
Yeah, well, I guess it seems like, you know, and that just takes it back to the, you know, all the orphan trains and the insane asylums. The people that were able to gain control after the millennial kingdom, I believe that they had some type of technology as well to do some type of reconstruction of people's brains and their memories and stuff like that. And I think the people that did remember were the ones that they threw in the asylums, and that's why they had so many children.
That you know,
and then, you know, everybody believes
that's
so
been going around for about a year, and I think they got me with that one. I like it because, I mean, when I first heard that, I kind of dug into it too, and shit, they were doing lobotomies like they were going out of style. Oh, you think the Earth is flat? How about a sewing needle in your brain? Is the Earth flat? Jell-O's yummy, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've never personally got, you know, I want to start traveling and looking at these places, but I've seen documentaries online where they show these old asylums where they did the lobotomies and all this stuff, man. And that stuff looks crazy. It's creepy. So they were doing it for a reason, and I'm guessing those were the people that were remembered, that still had a memory of what happened.
Had to.
And the Millennial Kingdom and everything else, and
had to, because
you know,
they were still finding buildings like they were back in the old days.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, this is mine now. No, it's yours now. And some people came out with a map and said, we can go there and get some sheep. We can go here and get that. And all we got to do is act nice for a little while. It's a setup.
And, you know, when you go and look at, have you ever gone in your cities and actually looked at the old stuff that you know is, you know, from hundreds of years ago?
Oh yeah, I've accidentally walked into an old one of those libraries from, you know, who's that guy that built the 1,000 libraries? And it wasn't a real library; it was a school at the time. And I was walking in, touring it, and they go like, "What are you doing here?" I'm going like, "Isn't this one of those Andrew Carnegie libraries?" And you go like, "Well, yeah, but it's the offices for the local junior college now." I'm going like, "Sign me up."
Yeah. Yeah.
It embarrassed Tommy. I was with him. He was pretty embarrassed.
You know, a lot of those places, you can feel how old they are. And
right.
It's scary. It's frightening to me. They have like well, they explain them as being old silos, rice that they used to allegedly store rice in the early 1900s. But there's a couple of them here, a few of them here in Houston, and you can just walking by it, you can feel there's no way it was built in 1920 or whatever they say it was. This thing is hundreds of years old, and I think it's part of something that was way bigger. Maybe like a machine. It looked like pistons to me, the way they had, you know. But I don't know. I just think it's part of something else.
That steampunk thing could have been a deal. It could have been real. I mean, what couldn't they do? What couldn't they do, man? I mean, it is. It's mind blowing to even be involved in it. It's obviously. I mean, as I'm just sitting here, you got my wheels spinning. Did anybody besides Lamech and his wives ever go build cities in the Bible? God's always said, "Hey, go occupy those cities. Yeah, go rebuild that one." You know, you think about it. It never goes. Yeah. It never was. It's like, come here, you. Elinadab, I'm going to anoint you to go up there and build a new city. Yes. But they did build new temples. They bought Hiram and Solomon, they went on a spending spree, man. They built the world. When you hear how much money they had, and that's where the buildings came from. I kind of am getting a feeling that they want to hear some more divine council talk. So we'll see if these guys can spark our imagination one more time.
Maybe a case to be made that they were assigned, or maybe they were already assigned by God and then fell to their various regions, or did they fall and then a captain among them, Lucifer, appointed, you're going to be over Chile, you're going to be over Persia. How does that
That
work?
might
There's
be
princes
close.
and principalities.
Okay, so the key text there is really Deuteronomy 32. It's the paper that I talked about earlier. It's this variant, and let me just call it up real quick so that we can read the text.
I should have called it up already or pulled it up. Why am I talking like him?
Deuteronomy 32. We'll start in verse 7. This is the Song of Moses. He says, "Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God." The textual variant there says sons of Israel. Some people might have a New American Standard Bible will say sons of Israel, but Dead Sea Scrolls and Septuagint say sons of God, and Heiser makes a very good argument that that's the original reading. The number of the sons of God there was understood throughout all the tradition as the number 7. So you can read in the Targum. Targum is a Jewish paraphrase.
I'm not a
Aramaic
Targum
of
fan.
the Old Testament. So some of them can be very, very strict and very close to the text, almost like just a really good translation that we have. And then others can be more expansive. And one of the more expansive ones in Genesis to Deuteronomy is Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, and it gives the number 70 there as a good example. Well, why is that significant? Because there were 70 nations at the Tower of Babel. So when Moses tells you to remember
We don't
the days
know
of old,
that.
he's telling you to remember Tower of Babel. Now, for him, that was a long, long time ago, and Moses, for us, was a long, long time ago. So this is a really long time ago. But according to that text, anyway, and it's really the main one that we have with the timing of it, the sons of God were given to the nations at the Tower of Babel, and it seems to me that it's because what happened was that, we were talking earlier before the show about the divine incursion view of how did the Nephilim.
All right, so I give zero credence, Dante, to the Septuagint and all of that whole, because they say, if you're going to be like, yeah, I like the Septuagint, you have to go with their version of why they like the Septuagint. They like it because they say a bunch of manuscripts were given to 70 different people, and they all came back with the exact same translation. So they said, that's our new Septuagint. This is the go-to Bible. And it sounds like a fairy tale to me.
Yeah, well, I don't have time to read any of those books, so I don't even know.
Right.
I don't know what's in any of them. I've heard of the Nag Hammadi. I've heard of all that Targum. I've heard of all that stuff, but I just can't read it.
I got the Nag Hammadi right over there, and I never read it. It was one of those things that, I'm in a university, and they're giving away books all the time, and it was free, so I took it, but I never decided to break it open. SmartPod has said, can someone point to the documents that Paco was referring to regarding STEM DARPA initiation and put the purpose in 1958? People have asked me that so many times. I have it now linked on my computer, and I'm going to be sharing it. I used to have it committed to memory. It is Statute 72, page 1580 of the 1958 United States Defense National Education Act. Part of it is Part F in section 1001. Part F says no part of any fund appropriated or otherwise made available for expenditure under authority of this act. That means if you're involved in it, you don't get no money. And this covered, if you're a senator, you've got to do this or you don't get no money. This act shall be used to make payments or loans to any individual unless this individual has executed and been filed with the commissioner an affidavit that he does not believe in and is not a member of and does not support any organization that teaches in, believes in, the overthrow of the United States government by force or violence or by any illegal or unconstitutional methods. Or 2. And why did they get the Pledge of Allegiance in 1958? They say under God. Well, probably for this. Number 2, has taken and subscribed to an oath or affirmation in the following form. I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the not all capital United States of America, and will support and defend the Constitution and laws of this United States against all its enemies, foreign and domestic. The provisions are Section 1001, Title 18, United States Code, United States Public Law, to strengthen the national defense and encourage and insist the expansion and improvement of education. So what other things does this cover? This will only take un momento. 1958 passed on September 2. For instance, along with many other things, DARPA, NASA, and STEM. Where's the STEM? You didn't. Anyway, they picked out the STEM was to pick out the people that they thought were going to help them do math, because they knew they were going to have to fake math, like break down it. That was a pretty quick breakdown. What'd you think of that, Dante?
Well, they had to do the be able to do the math to build a spaceship to go to the moon, right?
Yeah, just same thing, like the compartmentalization of building the atomic bomb at Los Alamos. You just put a bunch of people in the same room doing a job. I've studied this, and Dante, one of the guys, this wasn't at Los Alamos, this was at Oak Ridge in Tennessee. They asked him after the war at a celebration of they're proud they built the bomb, fake as it is. They didn't know it. They go, well, what did you do? He says, well, I couldn't tell anybody, but now that we can, he says, I sat in a room, and every time the gauge got up to 20 pounds per square inch, I pushed the button and it went back to reset. So we were all working on this complex experiment that we couldn't let each other know what we were doing.
Right.
Insanity.
It's still the same today to an extent for different things. I mean, I ask people all the time, people that have worked in the electrical industry for decades, man, how do we get our power? Like, have you actually worked in the nuclear power plant and seen how it actually works from beginning to end? No, not one person. I've never met one yet. So everything's always compartmentalized, still to this day.
Right. I had pulled up some stuff from earlier today. Everything's compartmentalized. What was it? Not this stuff. Well, anyway, maybe I have some pictures of it. This is all getting ready for this. Secret clocks. That's not it. Oh, yeah. See this, what's proper time, what's Earth-centered initial, is the theory of relativity correct? GPS satellite. And since I've been doing this, I've been telling people, when I was in the Army, I was a surveyor, and I worked on something called the parallel azimuth direction system. Now they call it something else, but this was all recently discovered, and I was there for it. The Lord has had me on the ground, and as I was listening to this video, just came out an hour or two ago, you know, they're admitting it was all just based on hunches and guesses. But now we all carry one of these in our pocket. That's how fast things are moving, not simply for someone,
Okay.
you know, my age
So
that
the hunches and guesses, or do you think that
the what?
do you
I didn't
think
hear you.
that it was really hunches and guesses, or do you think that they had help?
You know what? I
Do you
think
think that they had help, or was it really
I
hunches
think
and
they
guesses?
had plans. I think they had documents, you know, and a hunch. And I think they had some early success and a lot of failures. The what is it called when you bleed? Hemophilia. The hemophilia, that seems to me to be the biggest clue, because it skips a generation. And when the royal families that mostly have that hemophilia were first imprinted to it, they didn't know it skipped a generation, and they came out like genetic beasts. I've heard that one of these, like not King Henry VIII, but one of those other ones, he could in that full armor, you know, run and jump on the back of the horse just by hitting its butt and land in the saddle. You know, they were that, but then the next thing you know, oh, they get a bruise. And I were talking with Arturo the other day about marriage licenses, sickle cell anemia, blood types. Certain people can't marry certain people because if you're an AB negative and she's an AB positive, your baby will die. And they didn't know about that. It's not in the Bible. It's not in the history. It's all of a sudden in the 1900s. People need marriage license. We figured it out. There's just too much nonsense. The only thing I really know is that I haven't made up one of this. I'm only on this because of, you know, a dream and a vision. I'm only on it alone because my wife didn't want to come with me, you know. But everything that it's been leading to is true. I never went in it for the money. I only went in for it to be obedient to the Lord, and in His timing, it's coming out. This was even a bigger deal before COVID. I mean, then we were finding gold in the rocks and laying it out. I had like 9,500 subscribers or something like that. Oh, there goes Dante. We'll see if he comes back. It's always a pleasure when he pops in. Looks like that was a pretty nice car he has. Dante, I'm going to listen to more of the information, and if he pops back on, we'll just do it. So let's listen to a little bit more of their take on the divine council while I go get me a drink of water.
Nephilim get on the earth after the flood. There's 4 or 5 different views out there. One is that, you know, the DNA was carried through by maybe one of Noah's sons. Another one is that it wasn't a worldwide flood. Another one is that, and so some of the giants lived through it. Another one is that maybe somebody like Og the giant lived by hitching a ride on Noah's Ark. That's kind of a Jewish fairy tale.
Gilgamesh hanging on to the side of the ark and Noah's feeding him. I've seen that one. Not a fan, but
it's when you tell the kids when they're 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I actually tend to think that your view is right, that there was another incursion. And I think that incursion took place at the Tower of Babel. So you have to understand what the Tower of Babel was. So in order to understand it, you have to go back
I think that they're just fishing. You know, what are they into? They've only been talking 40 minutes, and or yeah. So I don't know how much longer they have, 40 more minutes, but they haven't been talking long. They're postulating, look, what difference does it make? He's going back to Rob Skiba. Maybe it was in one of Noah's sons. Can I ask you a question? What difference does it make? If the Bible says there were 8 souls on the ark, and we're all related to them, if you don't believe me, just check the genealogies of Jesus Christ. He's related to all of them because all of the nations will be blessed through Abraham's seed. And if they're human and there were giants before and after the flood, and they came off the ark, they're human. The Bible teaches they can be saved. There is no need to go Rob Skiba and Dr. Heiser and Book of Enoch and everything else because of made up words of what the Nephilim could be that the Bible does not teach. They're grasping at straws with a new doctrine that hasn't been thought through, because now the people that believe in the added 1,000 years know, hey, it's no big deal. Who cares? There was a creation for them, and then there was the creation from the dust of what we are. And we're human. We'll listen to some more and let me get fired up some more, but I will say this: it doesn't make any difference if you came off the ark and you're human, you can be saved. That's 0.1% of the Bible between Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 and Genesis chapter 10 verse 28, the end of the Tower of Babylon. That's so small of a part of the Bible. And then they never make another big deal about it. They never make another big deal about it. They mention, oh, here's some giants. There's some giants. Here's some giants. We kicked their ass. Here's some more giants. We kicked their ass too. It's not like when God's on your side, they were afraid of them. And they never said they looked like clowns. They dressed funny. They were disembodied demons. They never say that. And in the New Testament, they don't even barely go into it, you know. They know that, you know, Goliath was a giant, but it's just not talked about bloodlines of like, oh no, I hope I don't have Nephilim blood. You come on. It's a distraction and a sideshow, and it has the people that these two guys were heroes in the Preterist postmillennial movement that I was a part of until 2014, when all this flat earth, and then the Lord said, hey, the Bible says that I was coming back for them and you should believe that. Oh, okay, I will. You know, it's a lot more visionary than that, but people don't want to hear about visions, because if it didn't happen to them, it's not real, even if everything I say is true.
So, and then a little bit of Ezekiel can help fill in the gaps there too, because Ezekiel calls Eden the mountain of God. All we get in Genesis of Eden is that it's a garden, right? But it's a mountain. And why does that matter? Because Satan is there in the mountain garden of Eden, tempting our parents. Well, what's he doing there? He's there because it's a divine council scene. They're consider it Mount Olympus. They're on Mount Olympus. They're making, God has created our first parents to essentially have a seat on the divine council with the heavenly beings, but they get to rule over the earth. Wow. Whereas the heavenly beings are ruling over whatever's outside the earth, however that works. I don't have any idea. And actually, and this is the only thing I've ever read that makes a lot of sense of why Satan tempted them. And it's because he became jealous of this. And so you have whole books like the Life of Adam and Eve in the Pseudepigrapha that talk about that was at that moment that God made Adam and he gave him this dominion, that was the reason why Satan fell.
So so the fall of Satan and the fall of Adam in this scheme would be
very simultaneous to one another.
Two birds, one
after
stone.
The other.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly right. So
okay.
Okay. All right. Anybody still here? Anybody want to go to 1 John with me, and we'll find out the reason that Jesus came to earth. It says it in the chapter 3 of this epistle, 1 John, verse 6. No, verse 8. The devil has been sinning from the beginning, from the very start. And the one who practices sin is of the devil. This is why the Son of God was revealed, to destroy the works of the devil. So we have that timestamp, but it's not as clear that Satan was cast down to earth at that time. That I'm still, are you kidding me? Wise Up is in the house. Thanks, Wise Up. I appreciate that so much. This guy, we have quite the history, and he's a living legend. And and he was one of he actually is a witness to one of these, that we were the first ones, like with Age of Disclosure and Philip Derizian, that have been around the longest and stuff like that. So I always have, and we each are honing it in, and whatever he is, because of the way, at one way he stumbled on something called the pounded earth, and that it sets up as mortar, something about that. From that point on, he is always going to be a part of this history. No doubt about it, man. Yeah, I know. That's what they all say. I think you're a legend. And so far, I haven't been wrong. These guys got it all messed up.
So the whole point being there that they're in the divine council. In fact, I think you can make a case that there's more beings there, because Satan, Ezekiel, I forget the chapter, maybe 31. It's the chapter of Assyria being likened to a giant tree, a world tree. And then it talks about how the trees of Eden were envious of you. Well, why would it use trees of Eden language? Well, that's it's kind of a metaphor for other heavenly beings. And when Adam and Eve go hiding among the trees of Eden, like what's going on there?
You know what? This is very intriguing. I don't know if I'm getting itching ear syndrome or something, but it does seem funny that he walked among the trees, but he was there to take care of trees. So I don't know. I'm not going to jump right in. I've made that mistake for, like, if my wife tells me to jump off a bridge, I'm going to say, not again.
Tend to think that they're seeking refuge among the gods, if you want to call it that. And God gets very upset by this. Why are you running away from me? What did I ever do to you? And then he graciously clothes them with, and gives them the gospel and stuff. But the point is, there's a divine council scene. It's a mountain. The authorities given there, and actually even the temptation itself, believe it or not, is when you look at what the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is, and you go to, say, Solomon, and he talks about how it's the duty of a king to discern good and evil. Well, what does that mean? It means that it's the king's job to make a judicial pronouncement on right and wrong. Well, that's what divine counsel does. And that's the whole point of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan's temptation was incredibly subtle, and he actually tempted them with something that was very true. But the problem is that, there's a lot of problems with what happened, but of course, essentially is that they made the wrong decision, right? They went against what God said was right. They said, essentially, by eating it, they're making a judicial pronouncement that what God said is wrong.
Right.
Okay. And so then they get kicked off. Now, if we just take that verse in Deuteronomy, then what happens is that whatever happened before the flood and how that worked its way out with the fallen angels and men and authority and all. I don't know, and I don't know that we really can know. But at Tower of Babel, it's really a trying to get back to Eden. But instead of God putting us on his man-made mountain, we create a mountain ourselves. It's a ziggurat. That's the whole point of the thing. It's to emulate what a cosmic mountain is, what a divine council mountain is. And then we go up to the top and we try to make communication with the fallen heavenly beings. And God said, "That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm going to disperse you, and I'm going to make your language so you can't understand."
They shouldn't say that like the Bible teaches it, because Michael Heiser found it in other pseudepigraphical books, apocryphal books, of where they exist because that's where. What's the last few seconds here? No, man, you don't have any proof for this.
Emulate what a cosmic mountain is, what a divine council mountain is. And then we go up to the top and we try to make communication with the fallen heavenly beings. And God said, "That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm going to disperse you, and I'm going to make your language so you can't understand each other, so that you can't do this." And that
was it an astrological thing? Were they really trying to commune with the, right in front of God's nose? Like, we're planning the revolution right in front of you. Is that infra or supralapsarianism? Well, it's speculationism.
That's the moment it seems that Moses is saying, remember this, because that's the moment when I spread the nations out around the world, that I also gave each one of those nations one of the sons of God to rule over them.
Okay. Are these fallen sons of God to rule over them, or righteous?
I think so.
Well, not yet. In Genesis 1, it was, let's see who can do it. And Jesus took the last pick. Jehovah took the last pick, the Hebrews, and made them the superstars of King David, who most people would think, is, the perfect ideal king, except for the matter of Bathsheba. But, he even showed us how to do the best repenting ever in the whole world too. So David's the man, and he certainly wouldn't, be a bad.
So there's actually a really interesting passage in the, I think it's in the Critias in Plato, near the end. This is where he writes about Atlantis, and man, it's so weird because he has a line that's almost exactly word for word what Moses says in Deuteronomy 32:7. In the days of old, God gave to the nations according to their allotment. That's what he says. And then he goes, we got...
is it that hard for them to plan ahead in a 335-foot scheme where they only have to fake it for so long? And now they're giving it up. Oh, it seems weird. We're all talking about it. And we know it couldn't go down like that. They can film the girl in Jaws with braces and without braces. They can forge things that quote Moses to give this. Most of these people are going to end up going for Atlantis and other things, because I just don't see them on. Thou dost try too hard to stick with Dr. Heiser and the 2,000 years and the globe behind you, the Trinity et al.
When you're talking about the post-flood, I think that's a different story. We're in my mind, we're dealing with the Olympians, not the Titans. It's the Olympians who were somehow put over the nations of the world, because Titans are gone, at least for a while.
What's the difference?
Okay,
call
so
them Olympians, call them Titans. I see where this is going.
Demonic,
nowhere.
Called autonomous libertarian freedom. We have creatures have a degree of freedom, but God is the only one who is truly autonomously free. And so Satan always was on a leash. This is my view. It was always on a leash, and Job, shows us that. But in the cross and resurrection, it's like Christ, who's always been holding that leash, wrapped it around his head, and pulled him in a bit. Like, so the leash got shorter.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly right.
He's still not thrown into the lake of fire. That will come later. So Satan's still prowling around, but he had more walking around room. He had a little more slack in the leash pre-Christ. But I would put most of the happenings of Christ binding Satan, the strong man, like Christ even gives that parable. You're going to plunder the house, and I think that's what we're doing. That's the New Testament church. For 2,000 years has been plundering the house of this world.
You see, because postmillennials, and I was one for 40 years, 35 years or so, we believe that this world is going to be better. They believe that, and believe me, I'm as pro-life. I hate abortion as much as they do. I just don't vote anymore because it doesn't help to support the Republicans. They're not going to fix it. They outlawed abortion, and we got excited a couple of years ago. They're selling abortion pills on Amazon as of yesterday. Maybe we should think about a boycott, go back to the eBay.
Through conversion and gospel preaching, and I think even beyond just conversion and the Great Commission in that regard, but teaching the nations to obey all of Christ's commands in markets and in art and in governments and in all these different things, and through righteous legislation. This is kind of
Oliver Cromwell.
All of that has been happening because the strong man has been bound.
Oh, that's all
and
been
now,
happening.
We're going in and plundering the house.
We're
and
plundering
with the strong
the
man,
house
I think
now,
a certain bind. I think that implies some of Satan's minions also being in various degrees bound. And then for me, 80-70, I've never thought of it before. I'd have to give it more thought, but I've never thought of demonic binding in 80-70. I've always put that on like cross and resurrection.
Right.
And then 80-70, I put that as a post-mill guy, I put that as the fulfillment of Christ's prophecy, Matthew 24, all of that discourse, this generation will not pass away. Not just this type of generation, but 40 years a generation in Jewish terms, like you guys.
What he's not saying is that the millennium would start. They are waiting on the millennium when they get the world plundered and turned to Christ. I know because I was in this church, man, not this specific one, but the post-mill church.
You'll fall asleep, but a lot of you are going to be awake, and this is the generation that rejected me. That I came to my own, but they knew me not. You said, crucify him. May his blood be on us and our children. And so, before your eyes and your children's eyes, I'm going to come back and come in on the clouds. Joel 2, clouds signifying a sense of judgment. And Josephus even has, multiple eyewitness accounts of seeing like silhouettes of chariots going back in the billows of smoke in 87.
It's a fake.
So I think 80-70 was the wrapping up of a garment, the interim 40-year period between, the work of Christ but then now the old covenant is really rolled up and completely done and gone away.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Notice he didn't say in the millennium
the demonic powers, a lot of that. Maybe 87. But I don't know what about the sacking of the temple in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I think he's getting that really from
the demons.
He's getting that probably from like Gentry's view of Revelation, who's going to come out one of these decades with his magnum opus on Revelation, his commentary that's supposed to be so good from a post-mill view.
Yeah, I've heard the tales.
Yeah, I know. Everybody keeps hearing them. But it's the idea that when you take that early writing date of Revelation being prior to 70 AD, then now all of a sudden it allows you to be able to see that almost all of the book has been fulfilled. And so if you do that, then you kind of have to start going, well, did 70 AD do something to these watchers? Because you're reading Revelation different than like a futurist, would do. So,
or historist or futurist. Yeah. Well, and I mean, and I do. I date Revelation. I think it's was written moments before 80-70. I think these things soon to come to pass. 80 I would put it 80-65 to 80-69. Something right in there. But it's painted even the way that I read other books of the Bible.
I put it at about AD 55
and some of the things that Paul talks about, with
I want to make sure that everybody could hear me on that one. There was a man, Doug Bartles, a good man, and him and another guy worked out that what would be possible. And it fits in my time schedule that if they wrote the book of Revelation about 55 AD, no specifics are given, that would give everybody a chance to be familiar with it. It would also explain why the book of Second Timothy and Second Titus are so urgent with, yikes, here it is. First Timothy chapter 1, let's start talking about how you're going to make elders and deacons. Second Timothy chapter 1 verse 15, all of Asia has departed me. That's the great falling away. And yet they had time to be prepared for it, and they knew that it was going to happen. I think that it happened much earlier. Their best evidence was tying it into Paul's description of, I once knew a man who had a vision 14 years ago who went to the third heaven, whether physically or in the spirit, I do not know. And he explains one of the, why we have to be prepared that we're going to be changed, and it's closer to the end than it was. So I think the book of Revelation is even much earlier than 68, 69 AD. I think everybody had a chance to get familiar with it. You guys be nice to Wise Up in here. He's not just an old crappy New England or England brother, not New England brother. Well, you all heard him talk. You can't fake that accent.
future revival of Israel, not being in their future, but perhaps in our past, and that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, so
what future revival of Israel are people talking about?
Back to the 70 regions and 70 honchos, and they could each have dozens or hundreds or thousands of minions under them. And for what purpose? God assigns them.
It's as punishment. It's punitive, essentially.
Okay, explain.
So
that.
there's several different passages in Deuteronomy that talk about this. There's one in Deuteronomy 4, one in Deuteronomy 17, one in chapter 29, and then the one in chapter 32 that basically talks about, some of them talk about how I gave them to you, and then some of them talk about how basically I gave you to them. And why? Well, it's because you guys, essentially it's you wanted each other so bad. I'm going to let you just have each other and see how well that goes for you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So
it's punitive, like babysitting, like you're stuck with these people.
All right. We'll jump ahead. It looks like they do have about 25 minutes more. We'll jump ahead about 8 minutes. Let's try to keep in, what can we be looking for? Giants.
His bare essence, and it's not talking about the Father, it's talking about the Son, the Lord, who is a man of war, the commander of the armies of the Lord, the one who Joshua saw when he fell down on his knees, and the commander said, take off your sandals because the place where you're standing is holy ground. Well, that comes straight out of burning bush story, where Moses was told the very same thing by, guess who? The angel of the Lord. So when it says, who is like you among the gods, it's all Michael is a play on those three English words. That's all it is.
Okay. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
We didn't hear it all, but in a heartbeat here, we can get an idea, because some people like, and I don't know if you've ever heard it, but some people, like the Seventh-day Adventists, they make a big deal about Michael, the great prince, and they say, oh, obviously that's Jesus. Really? While he was speaking these words, Daniel 10, verse 15 starts. It then continues. I set my face towards the ground and became speechless, and suddenly one with the likeness of a man touched my lips and opened my mouth and said to the one standing before me, my Lord, because of the vision I am overcome with anguish. I have no strength. So just giving you the feel for it. He can't do anything wrong. Speak. Do you know why I have come to you? I must return at once to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But first I tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. Yet no one has courage to support me against these except Michael, your prince. Okay. So this is someone with the likeness of a man coming from an angel. He knows about Michael. He knows about these guys. And still, do not be afraid, Daniel. Verse 12 starts. It then continues. For from the first day that you proposed to understand and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come in response. However, the prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes. That doesn't sound like Jesus at all. It doesn't sound like it's any way possible. Yet that Ellen White makes me so mad. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left there with the king of Persia. A lot of that's happening in the spiritual realm. Verse 14 tells us when we should look for it. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the latter days. That concerns the vision. Wonder what these guys are still talking about. We're going to be wrapping it up.
Interesting. In a world where giants like Google and Microsoft reign supreme, there emerges a new challenger, a beacon of hope.
Are you the
I
beacon
think
of
I have
hope?
an appendix, or at least I have some quotes in the book about this, that it was the universal understanding of the church fathers that when a Nephilim or Rephaim, whatever you want to call it, and when it died, because it didn't belong to heaven or earth, it became a spirit that roamed the air, and those spirits became the demons of the New Testament. So when Jesus is
All right. So we'll end it with that complete, total, unbiblical nonsense. He can say, it was universal. All of them thought that the giants and the Nephilim were. No, it doesn't say it in the Bible. So how could the Bible scholars believe that? It doesn't say that about the Nephilim in this. So there's an hour and 18. We got most of it live. They just don't know. There's Nephilim. There's Rephaim. There's, the sons of Anak. They're called different things by different people. And it doesn't matter to us. If you're human, you got 2 eyes, 2 legs, breathe out of 2 nostrils most of the time, you pretty sure you can trace your lineage back to the Ark of Noah. You're human. You can be saved. That's what it's all about. Thank you for staying with me. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. You can guarantee I'm never going to tell you anything else, and neither are my friends. Why would we? Why would we? We've been proving we're 1 called, 2 chosen, and 3 faithful to have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen.